All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's Statement of Compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is called A New Phase of the Global Currency Reset. Thank you to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Project Director, to Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and to Cruchet Starnes, Audio and Prompter. A new phase of the global currency reset. 2 weeks ago, we talked about how we were staying alive and not landing in World War III. And last week, we talked about how the bankers had been harpooned and the world was on a Nantucket sleigh ride. How were the bankers harpooned? The Central Intelligence Agency tried bribing me 1 million shares in CMKX Diamonds. Instead of funding CMKX Diamonds, I bankrupted the chairman of the World Bank's Development Committee, Ken Ofori-Atta. I told you, any person who thinks they're going to fill the presidency of the World Bank is going to be bankrupted if they don't work with the rest of the world's military and our coalition in the global currency reset. Jim Kim is also now bankrupt under commercial liens. And then I said at that point that I was going to send the third notice of default and finish bankrupting the acting managing director and chair of the development committee and 7 other corrupt officials in the World Bank's secretariat. Ken Ofori-Atta, who is also Ghana's Minister of Finance, tried returning the notice of his default. That's when I gave the notice of default back to Ghana's ambassador, His Excellency Dr. Barfour Ajay Karwa. I posted a copy of my letter to Ghana's ambassador on the internet. I'm telling you this to illustrate that we're talking about actual reality. Sometimes it's hard for people to understand that we are in a kinder reality where people are going to clean up all the corruption that's coming from the world's paper money system and the world's crooked bankers and the Black Nobility at the center of all of this. In 4 more days, I'm going to finish bankrupting the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, and the president of the World Bank, David Malpass. I upload the videos in this series on YouTube, and people make comments. Yesterday, when I posted the response to Fufi007's comment, I said that we are in a new phase of the global currency reset. I check comments in YouTube before going on the DCTV series live broadcasts to find out what the banking cartel is up to. I had a bit of difficulty double-checking comments before today's broadcast. First of all, because YouTube removed all of the videos in my channel on Sunday. When YouTube put the videos and the people's comments on the videos back, the bankers who own YouTube scrambled the URLs, and it took me a while to find last week's video. The reason I said that we were entering a new phase is because the banking cartel put back all of the videos and comments which they removed. Fufi commented she wants us to give the bankers a second chance and she wants to remind me that I am mortal. This is a fact which I never forget, especially when I have various ailments, such as an irregular heartbeat, but now my heartbeat is regular. Fufi's comments were so clearly aligned with the banking cartel, they amounted to a tacit admission. I answered Fufi's comment. Make no mistake, Fufi's kind comments are insincere. Fufi is really expressing the position of the banking cartel. The decision about who is going to succeed me is not something that's up to me. I don't partner with anyone because that makes it impossible for me to function as overseer mandate trustee. It's up to humanity to find a suitable successor. Money doesn't belong to the governments. That's a recipe for corruption. We are not about to have a world currency either. Special drawing rights, that's the IMF's SDRs, are not going to be used as a world currency. The aurum belongs to the people in each country. That is paper, that is currency that's made out of gold. The world's gold in the global debt facility is in, I understand it's in caves where there are cameras looking at the caves. That's as far as I know. I want to talk about 3 more things in my prepared comments. The first is about our relationship. I'm just going to say that I think our relationship is very important. I asked a question in my social media that I'm going to ask my viewers. And that question is, our relationship is key. This is also what a book on motivational interviewing says. Quote, infused with respect and compassion for clients. My question, is humanity my client? I muted a Twitter account when it started posting religious comments. And the comment is, we're on the same side with God, the righteous one, and good and powerful at all times. And I replied to this comment. The people of this earth are focusing right now on cleaning up the corruption in our money, and then we can turn to other topics. Your approach is guaranteed to divide us and prevent us from clearing up the corruption. Was that what you intended to do? I was surprised when the mute was lifted and this account replied again to one of my tweets. I just wanted to emphasize my reply to Dennis C. Madlanghayan about sequencing so that we dismantle the banking cartel first before turning to other issues that have divided us in the past. My last point is to remind you about hidden knowledge that we're going to access during the global currency reset. One area of hidden knowledge is alternative energy sources. On Sunday, I received a video about thorium, so I'm going to remind you about the DCTV segment where we mentioned thorium, and you'll see links in the teleprompter to that segment. And I'm going to also show you in the teleprompter the email that I got forwarding the URL for that video about thorium energy. And there was a comment in the comment section on that video, which was done 8 months ago. And that comment was one of the comments, it's funny when people talk about the world, but really only mean USA and Europe. India already has a working thorium-based reactor, which they build themselves. And I'll give you a link in the teleprompter about India's free energy generator, and we had mentioned that earlier, I think about 3 years earlier. So there are any number of developments that are going to take place when we dismantle the banking cartel, because the banking cartel, as you know, has been depending on petroleum and also automobiles. This is something which they have a vested interest in. And I had commented a couple of weeks ago when it appeared that we were about to enter into a war with Iran and Syria. And my comment was that it's very clear that what the banking cartel is really interested in is pipelines to Europe, and whether it's going to be selling the gas from the natural gas from Russia, or whether it's going to be selling from Syria. That's really what we're looking at. But also in the teleprompter that I've posted today, I've also shown you some of the other conflicts where the banking cartel is really trying to create conflict, divide and conquer, trade wars. And this is not an accident. It's because the banking cartel wants to hold on to power, and this is the way they do it. They confuse us, and we do their dirty work for them because we're so confused. And that's the whole point, is that we don't have to continue to be confused, because there's no reason for us to be handing over money to the banking cartel, which thinks that we owe them money on the taxes. They charge interest on currency, and the point about it is that the currency should really be issued by us, either in our local communities through a barter system, or using the world's precious metals, gold or silver. We've been talking mostly about gold because there's actually so much of it in the global debt facility. One of the questions that's recently come up is, how can we prove that that gold really exists? And the comment that I made was because the banking cartel has tried so many times to steal it. And of course, they haven't succeeded. And the reason that they haven't succeeded in stealing it is because after 50 years, any of the documents that a person who's claiming that they have a right to the world's gold, they're no longer valid. There's something called the statute of limitations. And we've passed that 50-year period. So we're home free. It's ours. And there's no reason for us to to give it away, is there? No, there's no reason. So that gold is going to go into the world's currency, and we're not going to be paying interest to the banking cartel. They're not entitled to it. They're parasites. They've been hoodwinking us. And at the moment, there are enough people who have done their homework. They've looked at the documentation that I've showed and that other people have showed, and they've realized that, yes, this is absolutely correct. And if you look at the comments on YouTube, you can see many of these people that are in what I call the critical mass. And once enough people started to understand what the actual reality is, which is that the world's wealth is not something that the Black Nobility is entitled to or the banking cartel is entitled to. It belongs to us. Once enough people realized this, then there was a reality that became manifested. That's the way reality works. And the banking cartel was hoping that we would forget about this, or that the critical mass wouldn't start expecting things to change. And I've been getting a lot of criticism asking me why I'm taking so long. Why don't I start moving faster? And the point that I've made is that I'm sorry. Are you trying to tell me that time's up? No, I've got plenty of time. Good. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. Right. This is wonderful, actually, because our relationship is key. And what I was saying about people criticizing me for not moving faster, what I've been saying is that I can't move any faster than people are ready. We're in a relationship now, and that relationship is becoming more solid, but it's still pretty tenuous, and that's what's taking time. People have to get used to me, and I have to get used to what it is that I'm doing here and how I'm explaining things. You'll see that I've been learning. I've been accepting feedback and trying to be more clear, because there's a lot of moving parts in the global currency reset. Some of it is really pretty basic, and what's basic is that there's gold that is there for humanity, that belongs to humanity, that was put into a trust. Do you have a problem with the mic? Oh, sorry. Sorry for the technical glitches. I'm really very grateful to the team at DCTV. When you see some of the videos that I've put up myself, you see the difference. And this is really very important, that people are aware of these things, and that we have this dialogue. And of course, what happened when YouTube, which is owned by the banking cartel, when YouTube took all of the videos down and all of the people's comments, then it became difficult, I think, for people to see the chronology of how we've been learning how to work together. At the very beginning, when I learned about the gold that was put aside at the end of World War II, I believed the person, Wolfgang Struck, who was telling me about it. And it took a while for me to realize, and what really convinced me that he was just trying to steal the world's gold, was when there are also some bonds that were issued by the Federal Reserve, because people, the nobility that owned gold, were afraid that that gold was going to be taken during the wars, and so the Federal Reserve issued bonds to them, and they could earn interest, and they relinquished their gold. So those bonds were originally $270 trillion worth, but the interest has been compounding since the 1930s, and the amount now that the Federal Reserve owes is $2 quadrillion. And what I did was I took that debt and I recorded a lien against the Federal Reserve. So that means that the Federal Reserve is bankrupt, and that's the basis for us to wind down the banking cartel, because they're bankrupt and we own them, because these bonds are in the global debt facility, which is the beneficiaries are humanity. So when Wolfgang Struck started to try to sell those bonds for pennies on the dollar, I said, no, you can't do that. But that's when I realized that he didn't have the interest of humanity at heart. He was working either for himself or for the banking cartel. But in any event, it wasn't something, he wasn't anyone that I wanted to be working with. And he also began by telling me a lot of lies about who Jose Rizal was. And that is the man who, he was from the Philippines, who rose through the ranks of the Vatican and got the assets in the global debt facility, which he then, at the end of World War II, he shipped to Singapore and melted down and stamped so that it's clear that it's owned in the global debt facility by humanity. And that it's a vast amount of gold, which we're going to use to mint the currency of the world. And it's going to be minted in each and every country. We're not talking about a world currency. We're going to be decentralizing, and people are going to be taking back their governments, because the governments have been, they're now illegitimate. The banking cartel has taken the constitutions of the countries, including the Constitution of the United States, and they've rescinded it, and they've turned the governments into companies. Now, that's ridiculous, but that's the actual fact, and I've been showing people the documents for that. And just recently, I showed people another very convincing document. Now, if you're not a lawyer, your eyes are going to glaze over when you read that stuff. It's pretty technical. But what we're going to be having to do in the global currency reset is we're going to have to take back our legality. There is a legal system which is not so complicated. It's called the common law. And if we don't have a legal system, then it's going to be survival of the fittest. And the one who's the strongest is going to rule. And that's not the way we want to base our society. We want to base our society on the rule of law, but we don't want it to be the banker's law. And so that's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using the common law. And what I've been doing is I've been using the common law, which there is a tradition of the common law that goes back thousands of years. And I've been using the common law against the banking cartel's representatives. That's what these common law liens are. I've taken away their property. And if you doubt whether or not this is valid, you can see that Ken Ofori-Atta returned the notice of default. He wouldn't have bothered to do that if it weren't valid. And there was another time that Jesse White wrote a letter to me and said that he was going to try to declare the commercial lien against him, bankrupting him. He was going to try to come up with an argument to say that it wasn't valid. And of course, his argument was all wrong, and it is valid. So yes, this common law is valid, and we've been going against the banking cartel's agents who are harming us. That's the point about it. They're harming us by preventing us from going forward with the global currency reset. And we're going to do this peacefully. And the reason that I know it can be done peacefully is because the militaries of the world are on our side. And if anyone doubts whether this is true, when I say this, and it's not being contradicted, and when I'm sending various documents to all the embassies of the world, and nobody's complaining, or when, for example, I returned that notice of default to the chair of the Development Committee, that's the group that's supposed to be managing the global debt facility. And the ambassador of Ghana didn't complain, did he? And I've given you a copy of the letter that I sent to him. So the proof is really there, and there's compelling proof that I've been giving you. Every single statement that I make, I put back up because it's all true. And so that's our relationship, actually. People ask me questions. People send information to me. And it's all there in the public for us to learn from. And there are many questions that I'm not able to answer. I'm not the world's librarian, for heaven's sakes, either. I do the best I can. But, and I get a lot of help, that's true. But we're going to have our hands full because the banking cartel has been lying to us. Many of the things that we believe are true are absolutely not true, starting with our history. There's a group in Moscow State University that has proven, they're mathematicians, and they've proven that the Jesuits have just lied to us about our history. We have to go back and reconstruct it and find out what our actual history is. And there are any other number of facts. One of the facts that I'm going to be talking about next week is how human beings function, our biology, how we think, and most importantly, how we're interconnected with each other. This is something which is really quite marvelous, and it's based on scientific proof. So we have a lot to learn, and we're going to be learning it with each other. But first, we have to be relying on ourselves, that we're capable of working together and functioning. One of the comments that this foofy made was that we're really not capable of governing ourselves. Oh, the banking cartel has done it for so many thousands of years, and they think they have a right to continue, and we should agree to it. This is not something that we're going to agree to. It's very clear that we're not going to agree to this at all. And I'm not going to try to get out ahead of people. That's disrespectful also. It doesn't do anyone any good for me to be taking positions that aren't shared by people. So I'm expecting feedback to find out how we need to proceed together and the metaphor that I used was, I said, I'm dancing the tango and I'm not leading, I'm following. That's what I'm doing. I'm dancing with the rest of humanity. But we're actually all one. And so I'm going to expect feedback. And when you look at the YouTube channel, you'll see that the banking cartel pretends to be people and makes various comments that it's Is it time to wind down? No. Oh, okay. We're starting to run out of time. Well, I'm just going to tell you two of the comments that the banking cartel, or one comment. We don't have time for two. One comment was about how we knew that the military powers are backing humanity. And the way we know this, first of all, is because of the way that the CIA was attacked by the Marines. And that happened in November of 2017. So that was a pretty clear example. But also one of the other indicators is that you see that YouTube put the comments back. If they thought that they could have gotten away with keeping them down, they really would have done that. So the power is really with us and not with the banking cartel. So, and we're going to find this out as time goes by. A critical mass, including the world's military powers, know about the difference between reality and the banking cartel's lies. As we learn who we are, it gets harder to manipulate us. We are starting to work ourselves loose from the weaponry, disinformation, distractions, and zero in on getting rid of the corruption in our money. This is a process on an unprecedented scale. The real question is not when will it happen, because there's so much going on that people understand change is inevitable. The real question is, can we handle these changes? That's why it's so important for us to know who we are and that we can handle it.